The night was colder than usual, the kind of cold that made even strong men hurry home and shut their doors tight. Snow kept falling from the sky like endless white dust, covering the streets, the roofs, and the broken alleys where no one wished to walk. In one of those alleys hidden between two tall walls, a tiny figure curled up in the corner. Her skin pale, her hair messy and thin. She was not human. Her small pointed ears and faint glow under her skin showed she was alien. And yet she was only a child, an orphan with no place to go. Her breath was weak, every exhale turning into a small cloud of frost. Her hands pressed against her chest as if she could trap the little warmth left inside her body. Hunger had already stolen her strength, but the snow was now stealing her life. Passers-by moved quickly on the main street nearby. They looked the other way. They heard nothing, or at least they pretended not to hear, because sometimes a soft cry did escape the girl's lips. But in a world where alien orphans were unwanted, no one dared to stop, she whispered to herself. Almost like a prayer, "Mom, Dad, please, not so cold." Her voice was fading. The snowflakes rested on her eyelashes and never melted. That was how cold she had become. The alley grew darker, the street lamps flickered, and her small body slowly sank deeper into the snow. Her mind drifting away, she saw shapes in the white fog, memories perhaps of a family she once had, or maybe only dreams of warmth she never truly knew. Her thin arms shook once more, then fell still, her eyes closed. And then footsteps echoed, slow but steady. Crunching the snow, a human boy, no older than 14, walked into the alley. He had been searching for scraps, for old bottles and pieces of metal to sell. His jacket was patched, his shoes almost broken. He was poor himself, but he was alive. He stopped when he saw the little figure in the snow. At first he thought it was a doll, abandoned by some cruel child. But then he noticed the faint rise and fall of her chest. She was breathing barely. The boy dropped his bag and rushed closer. His heart began to beat fast. Hey, can you hear me?" he said, shaking her gently. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. Snow had already covered half of her small body. He brushed it off quickly, his fingers burning from the cold. He could not believe no one had noticed her, or maybe they had noticed and simply chosen not to help. For a moment he hesitated too. His own family had so little, his father gone, his mother sick. He was the one who worked and brought home scraps. If he took this alien orphan with him, there would be more mouths to feed, more trouble. But then the girl's eyes opened just a little, glowing faintly in the dark. She looked at him without focus, and a single word escaped her trembling lips. Help. That word cut through him sharper than the cold. It was not just a cry, it was trust, a desperate trust placed in a stranger. The boy looked down at his own jacket, thin but still warm compared to nothing. Slowly, without thinking twice, he pulled it off and wrapped it around her tiny body, covering her from the snow. Her trembling stopped for a moment. She gave a faint sigh, and her small fingers grabbed the edge of the coat as if holding on to life itself. The boy sat beside her, ignoring the cold biting into his own skin. He whispered, "You're not garbage, you're not something to throw away. I won't leave you here." The wind howled through the alley, but his words stayed soft and warm. The girl's eyes closed again, but this time, there was a hint of peace in her face. From the street, a shadow moved. Someone had seen the boy cover the alien orphan with his coat. And though the boy did not notice, the eyes of the stranger followed them carefully. The night was far from over. The danger had only just begun, but in that frozen alley, for the first time in many nights, the orphan felt warmth, and a promise had been made, one that could not be broken. The coat was too big for her tiny frame. Its sleeves hung loose and the fabric dragged against the snow. But for the alien orphan girl, it felt like a shield, like the first wall between her and the biting cold. Her eyelids fluttered. She felt the strange warmth sinking slowly into her frozen skin. She opened her eyes for a moment and saw the human boy, his face red from the cold, his arms shivering without the jacket. Yet he did not take it back. "Stay awake," he whispered softly, shaking her shoulder. "If you sleep now, you might never wake up." His voice was young, but steady, carrying a weight far beyond his years. The girl blinked weakly, her lips trembling. Why help me?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. The boy hesitated. He could not explain why. He had nothing himself, no money, no proper food, no father at home to guide him. But something inside him would not let him leave her to die. "Because you don't deserve to be left here," he finally said. "No one does." From the main street, a group of shopkeepers and travelers glanced into the alley. Some stopped for a moment, seeing the boy kneeling over the alien child. But instead of helping, they shook their heads and moved on. One man muttered under his breath, "Stupid human boy." Wasting his coat on her kind, the boy heard it, and anger boiled in his chest. But he did not respond. His focus was on the girl. Her skin was faintly glowing under the coat. A soft alien shimmer, almost like starlight trapped beneath her skin. She looked fragile, but there was something unexplainably beautiful about her presence. Slowly, the boy lifted her into his arms. She was light, far too light for someone her age. "Come on," he said, "you can't stay here. I'll take you somewhere safe." The girl's head rested against his chest. She wanted to resist, afraid of being a burden, but her body had no strength. She whispered again, "They don't like me. You will be hated too." "I don't care," the boy answered without hesitation, his voice firm. "Let them hate me, but I won't leave you to freeze." As he carried her out of the alley, whispers followed him, people pointing, some laughing, others disgusted, but he walked faster, holding her close. The streets were long, the snow deeper, and his breath came heavy, but he did not stop until they reached the small shack he called home. A crooked wooden door, cracked windows, and smoke barely rising from a weak fire inside. He pushed the door open with his shoulder and stepped inside. "Mom," he called, his voice nervous. "I found someone outside, a thin woman. Pale and sickly, sat near the fire, coughing softly. She looked up with tired eyes, her expression shifting when she saw the alien child in his arms. "Oh, Daniel," she whispered, fear and worry in her tone. "What have you done?" "She was dying." The boy, Daniel, replied quickly, laying the girl down near the fire. "I couldn't just walk away, please, Mom. She needs help." The mother closed her eyes for a moment, fighting against fear and compassion. She too had heard the rumors. Alien orphans were cursed, unwanted, blamed for misfortunes. Helping one meant trouble, maybe even danger. But when she saw the girl's trembling hands clutching the coat, her heart softened. "Give her soup," she finally said, her voice tired but gentle. "If she is still alive after the night, then we'll talk." Daniel rushed to the small pot on the fire, scooping thin broth into a cracked bowl. He carefully lifted the girl's head and helped her drink. She coughed at first, then slowly swallowed, her eyes filling with tears at the taste of warmth. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice shaking. "I thought no one would care." Daniel smiled faintly, brushing snow from her hair. "You don't have to thank me," he said. "Just don't give up." The fire crackled. The small shack filled with the sound of the storm outside, but inside there was a fragile warmth, a moment of peace. Yet outside, the whispers in the market grew louder. People spoke of the human boy who gave his coat to an alien orphan. Some said it was foolishness, others called it dangerous. And in the shadows of the street, cloaked figures listened carefully. One of them turned to the other and muttered, "So, she is still alive." The girl stirred in her sleep, clutching Daniel's coat tightly, unaware that her presence had already been noticed, unaware that forces beyond the snowstorm were closing in. For now, though, she had warmth, a coat, and someone who would not abandon her, but the price of kindness was about to be heavier than either of them imagined. Morning came with a pale sun hidden behind clouds. Snow still covered the streets, and the market slowly filled with life. Vendors brushed snow from their stalls. Women bargained loudly, and children chased each other through the narrow lanes. But beneath the noise there was a steady hum. People talking about what had happened in the night, "Did you hear?" One shopkeeper whispered to another as he arranged jars of dried fruit. "That human boy, Daniel, I think he carried an alien orphan to his home. Wrapped her in his own coat." The second man frowned, shaking his head. "Foolish, he's cursed himself. Everyone knows those alien orphans bring bad luck. No one touches them for a reason." Nearby, an old woman, her hands wrinkled from years of labor, listened quietly. She remembered once long ago when another orphan was left to freeze. She had walked away too, but the memory never left her. She sighed deeply. Maybe the boy did what we should have done," she whispered to herself, though no one else heard by midday. The whispers had grown into louder voices, small crowds gathering, some laughing at the boy's foolish kindness, others fearful. "The human has brought danger to us all," muttered a baker. "If the wrong people find out, the entire market will suffer." And indeed, in a shadowed corner, two cloaked figures were already listening, their eyes cold, their movements precise. One leaned closer and said in a low voice, "So it's true, the girl survived?" The other nodded. "We must inform the hunters, they won't let this continue." Back at the shack, Daniel was unaware of how quickly the story spread. He sat beside the small fire, watching as the girl slowly sipped another bowl of thin soup, her color returning, her glow faint but steady now. She looked up at him with wide eyes. "Why do they look at me like I am a monster?" she asked softly. "Even before, when I was in the streets, they would turn away like I was dirt." Daniel frowned. He had no answer that could heal the wound in her words. "Because people are afraid of what they don't understand," he said finally. "They think it's easier to hate than to care." The girl lowered her head, her small fingers gripping the coat tighter. "Then why are you different?" Daniel hesitated, staring into the fire. He didn't know why either, only that leaving her there had felt like a crime. "Maybe because I know how it feels," he whispered, "to be unwanted, to be hungry, to be cold. No one should go through that alone." His mother coughed softly from her corner, her weak body wrapped in a blanket. She had been listening quietly, though she said nothing. Inside, her heart wrestled between fear and pride. Later that afternoon, Daniel stepped into the market to fetch bread. His pockets nearly empty, he walked fast, but as he entered, heads turned, voices hushed, then rose again. "There he is," someone whispered, "the boy who brought the alien into his home." "Shameful," another spat. "He's bringing trouble to us all." Daniel ignored them, though his chest burned with anger. He bought the cheapest loaf he could find, but as he turned to leave, 3 older boys stepped in his way, their grins sharp. "Hey, Daniel," one of them said mockingly, "how's your new pet? Does it bark or just glow in the dark?" Laughter erupted. Daniel clenched his fist but stayed silent. He knew fighting them would only make things worse. He pushed past, but one shoved him back. "Careful, human hero. Kindness won't save you when the hunters come." Daniel's eyes narrowed, but before he could speak, a deep voice interrupted. "Enough." An old man with a cane stepped forward, his gaze sharp. "You laugh at the boy, yet none of you had the courage to help the child. Remember that." Before mocking him, the crowd fell silent, though the boys muttered curses and walked away. Daniel gave the old man a grateful nod before hurrying back home. When he returned, the girl was waiting. Her small body wrapped in blankets, she looked at him with worry. "They will hurt you because of me," she said. Guilt heavy in her voice, Daniel knelt beside her, placing the bread in her lap. "Let them talk," he said firmly. "I'd rather be hated for helping you than praised for walking away." Her eyes filled with tears. She opened her mouth to reply, but then froze, her body trembling. "Daniel," she whispered. Someone was watching through the window. He turned sharply, rushing to the small window, but saw nothing except snow blowing in the wind. Still, his gut twisted with unease. The market whispers, the cloaked figures, the taunts of the boys, it was all connected. The girl clutched his coat tighter, her glow dimming with fear. "They will come for me," she said, her voice shaking. "They always do." Daniel placed his hand gently on hers, meeting her terrified eyes. "Then they'll have to go through me first," he said, his words steady though his heart pounded. Outside, hidden in the storm, the cloaked figures smiled. "Yes," one murmured. "Soon." Very soon, the market had whispered, the hunters had heard. And now the real danger was on its way. The small shack smelled of burning wood and thin soup, a fragile warmth that fought against the storm outside. Inside, the alien orphan girl sat near the fire, her eyes wide as she watched the steam rise from a cracked bowl in Daniel's hands. He placed the bowl in front of her gently. "It's not much," he said softly, "but it's warm, and it's yours." The girl stared at it, her fingers trembling. She leaned closer but did not touch it yet, her throat dry, her lips quivering. "Mine?" she whispered, the word strange on her tongue. "Yes," Daniel said firmly, "all yours." Slowly, she lifted the bowl, her hands shaking. She brought it to her lips and sipped. The taste was simple, just broth made of bones and vegetables. But for her it was more than a feast. Warmth spread through her chest. Her empty stomach tightened, then relaxed. She swallowed again, faster this time, tears gathering in her glowing eyes. Daniel watched silently, his mother too, coughing softly in her blanket. They both saw how the girl's entire body seemed to awaken with each sip, her fingers gaining color, her breathing steadying. It was as if life was returning to her. The girl put the bowl down for a moment, pressing her hand against her chest. "It's been so long," she whispered, her voice breaking. "So long since I ate something warm." Daniel leaned closer. "When was the last time?" She shook her head, her memories scattered. "I don't remember. Maybe a year? Maybe more. After they left me, after they said I was too small, too weak." Her words faltered and she bit her lip. "I thought I would never eat again." The room went quiet except for the crackle of fire. Daniel's jaw tightened, anger flashing in his young eyes. How could anyone abandon a child just because she was small? His mother spoke gently, her voice raspy but kind. "Eat, child. Don't let old pain steal today's warmth." The girl nodded quickly and finished the soup. Every drop gone, she licked her lips shyly, embarrassed by her hunger, but Daniel only smiled and handed her a small piece of bread. "Here, this too." She stared at the bread like it was treasure, then broke it slowly, chewing carefully as if afraid it might vanish if she ate too fast. For the first time in her life, she felt full. Not completely, but enough to ease the endless ache in her belly. She leaned back, her small frame sinking into Daniel's coat that still wrapped her shoulders. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice trembling with gratitude. "You gave me life tonight." Daniel shook his head. "No, you saved yourself. I only helped a little." But deep inside, he knew it was more than a little. If he hadn't walked into that alley, she would be nothing more than another forgotten figure buried under the snow. The girl's eyes closed for a moment, her breathing calm, but then her body shivered, a memory flashing behind her eyelids. She sat up suddenly, gripping Daniel's arm. "They'll come," she whispered urgently. "They always come when someone helps me." Daniel frowned. "Who?" "The hunters," she said, her voice almost a whimper. "They don't want me alive. They say I carry shame. They follow me to make sure I never rise again." Daniel's stomach tightened, his mind flashing back to the whispers in the market, the boys' taunts, the strange cloaked figures. Her words made sense now, too much sense. His mother looked at them both with fear in her tired eyes. "Daniel, you must be careful. Kindness is one thing, but these hunters, they are not ordinary men." The girl clung tighter to his sleeve, her small fingers cold despite the fire. "You should let me go," she said, tears filling her eyes. "If they find me here, they'll hurt you too. Maybe kill you." Daniel placed his hand gently over hers, shaking his head. "No, I won't let you go back to the cold. And I won't let anyone hurt you." His voice was steady, more like a promise than a choice. The girl looked at him with disbelief. Her lips parted as if she wanted to argue, but no words came. She only stared at him like he was something she had never seen before, someone who refused to abandon her. Outside, the storm grew louder, wind howling through the cracks. But within that shack, for the first time in years, the girl felt safe enough to close her eyes, her head resting lightly against Daniel's shoulder. Daniel kept staring at the door. His mind restless, he knew danger was coming. He had seen the way the market people looked at him, heard their words, and remembered the shadow outside their window. Somewhere in the snow-covered streets, the cloaked figures moved silently, leaving no tracks, their eyes sharp. "Their purpose clear," one of them whispered. "Tonight or tomorrow, it doesn't matter. The girl will not live long." Back at the shack, Daniel pulled the blanket higher over the orphan. His jaw tight, his heart steady, he whispered to himself, "They'll have to get through me first." The girl, half asleep, heard his words, and for the first time since she had been abandoned, she smiled faintly, her tears drying, because maybe, just maybe, she had found someone who would not let go. The storm slowed by the next evening, but the cold was sharper than before. Snow piled against doors and windows, the streets nearly silent, and in that silence the hunters moved, cloaked in dark fabric that blended with the shadows. They were not ordinary men, their faces hidden, their movements precise, their boots left no sound. Each carried strange weapons shaped like curved blades that glowed faintly blue. They were trackers trained for one purpose, to erase what their masters called shame. At the edge of the market, they questioned the vendors, their voices low and cold. "Where is the girl?" The vendors hesitated, fear clear in their eyes. Some pretended ignorance, but whispers had already betrayed the truth. One pointed weakly toward the poor district. "The human boy took her. His shack is near the broken bridge." The hunters exchanged sharp glances and moved on, leaving fear behind like a poison. Inside the shack, the fire had burned low. Daniel added small sticks, trying to keep the flame alive. The orphan girl sat near the corner, wrapped in his coat, her small hands clutching the fabric tightly, her glow faint but steady. She looked at him with wide eyes. "They're close," she whispered. "I can feel them." Daniel turned sharply. "How?" "They marked me once," she explained softly, touching her chest where a faint scar remained. "I always feel when they come, like the air grows heavier." His mother coughed in the background, fear in her tired face. "Daniel, maybe she's right. Maybe you should take her far away before they reach here." Daniel shook his head firmly. If I run, they'll still follow. If I hide, they'll find us. I won't let them scare me. Not here. The girl lowered her head, tears sliding down her cheeks. They'll kill you. Just like they tried to kill me. Daniel knelt beside her, lifting her chin gently, his eyes steady. Then we'll fight. Together? The knock came suddenly, 3 hard strikes on the wooden door. The shack trembled. Silence followed. Daniel's heart pounded. His mother gasped. The girl froze, her small fingers digging into the coat. Another knock, louder, slower. Open, a cold voice demanded. We know she is inside. Daniel swallowed hard, every instinct telling him to run, but his feet would not move. He stood, his body shaking but his eyes sharp. He whispered to the girl, "Stay quiet. Stay hidden." She shook her head desperately. "They'll take me if you open." "They always do." Daniel stepped toward the door, his hands curling into fists. "Then I won't open," he whispered back. The voice outside grew harsher. "Do not test us, boy. She belongs to us. Give her. And you may live." Daniel's anger boiled. He shouted back, "She belongs to no one. Not to you, not to anyone." The silence that followed was heavy. Then the hunters struck. The door rattled under their force, wood cracking. The girl cried out softly. Daniel rushed to block it, pushing his weight against the door. The hunters outside whispered to each other. One said, "He resists," another replied coldly. "Then he dies." They struck again. The shack shook, dust falling from the ceiling. Daniel's mother coughed harder, covering her mouth with trembling hands. Daniel turned quickly to the girl, his voice urgent. "There's a way out, the back wall. The hole near the crates, crawl through it. Go into the woods." Her eyes widened with fear. "Not without you." "You must," Daniel shouted, his eyes fierce. "If they catch you here, all of this is for nothing." Tears streamed down her cheeks. But before she could argue, the door splintered, a blade piercing through the wood. Glowing blue in the dim light, Daniel's heart raced. He grabbed a broken piece of metal from the floor, just a scrap. But it would have to do. He stood ready as the hunters broke the door open. The cloaked figures stepped inside, their eyes cold, their blades humming softly. One pointed at the girl. "There she is, take her." Daniel stood between them, holding the scrap like a weapon. "Over my dead body," he said, his voice trembling but steady. The hunters smirked. Stepping closer, the girl cried out, "Daniel, don't." One hunter lunged. Swinging his glowing blade, Daniel ducked, the blade cutting deep into the wooden wall, sparks flying. Daniel swung the scrap metal with all his strength. Striking the hunter's arm, the weapon clattered to the ground. The second hunter moved fast, but the girl, in desperation, threw the empty soup bowl at his head. It shattered, distracting him for a moment, enough for Daniel to push him back with a kick. The fight was uneven. Daniel knew it, but his blood roared with one thought. He would not let them take her. The hunters regrouped. Circling him, one hissed, "Stupid human. Risking everything for trash." Daniel's eyes burned with fury. "She's not trash, she's family." The hunters struck again, faster, stronger. But in the chaos, the girl crawled toward the back hole, Daniel's mother urging her with weak hands. "Go, child, quickly." Her tears blurred her vision, but she obeyed, whispering, "I'll come back, Daniel. I promise." The last thing she saw as she crawled through the hole into the snowy night was Daniel standing tall, swinging his scrap of metal, shouting with defiance as the hunters closed in. The snow outside swallowed her small frame, her glow faint under the storm, but her heart carried his words like fire. And in the broken shack, the battle for her life had truly begun. Snow crunched under her tiny feet as the alien orphan girl stumbled out of the hole in the shack wall. The storm wrapped around her like claws, wind pushing against her small body. Her breath came fast. Visible in the frozen air, behind her, muffled sounds of struggle filled the shack. Wood breaking, Daniel shouting, hunters snarling, the clash of metal against glowing blades. Every sound made her want to turn back, but Daniel's last words echoed in her head. "Run." She ran, her coat dragging in the snow. Too heavy for her thin frame, but the only thing keeping her alive. The streets were empty. The lamps flickered weakly. Every corner felt dangerous. Every shadow seemed alive. She ducked into an alley, pressed against the wall listening. Her glowing skin pulsed faintly. Too bright for hiding. She rubbed snow on herself, trying to dull the shine, whispering, "Don't see me, don't see me." Then from the shack came a crash. One of the hunters had broken through the wall, his dark figure stepping into the snow. His eyes glowing like ice, he turned, scanning, and saw the faint trail of small footprints leading away. The girl froze, her heart hammering. The hunter tilted his head, a cruel smile forming. He began to follow, silent and steady. She turned and bolted, her legs weak but her fear stronger. The snow swallowed her steps. Her breath burned in her throat. The world blurred around her. "Run faster," she whispered to herself. "Don't stop, don't stop." Behind her, she heard another set of footsteps. Daniel, stumbling out of the ruined shack, his face pale, his arm bleeding, but his eyes locked on her. "Keep running," he shouted, his voice cutting through the storm. Her heart lifted, tears freezing on her cheeks. Daniel was alive, he had escaped the hunters, but then another shadow appeared from the rooftops. A second hunter leaping down, his blade glowing, landing between them and the path to the woods. The girl screamed, slipping in the snow. Daniel rushed forward, grabbing a piece of broken wood from the ground. He swung wildly, forcing the hunter back a step. "Go!" he shouted again. "I'll hold him." "No," she cried, her voice breaking. "I won't leave you." Daniel grabbed her hand, pulling her with him instead of letting her go. His breath ragged, his body weak, but his grip strong. "Then we run together." They sprinted down the narrow lane, snow spraying from their steps. The hunters followed, silent and relentless, glowing blades cutting through the air. The woods loomed ahead, dark trees covered in frost, branches like arms reaching out. The storm seemed even colder inside the forest. But Daniel pushed forward, dragging the girl along. Their only chance was to disappear in the maze of trees. The hunters entered too, their figures slipping between the trunks like shadows, their movements smooth, almost inhuman. The girl's legs gave out. She fell to her knees, gasping, "I can't anymore." Daniel knelt beside her, lifting her quickly, carrying her in his arms, though his body shook with exhaustion. "Yes, you can," he said through clenched teeth. "We're almost there, hold on." Branches whipped his face. The snow grew deeper, but he did not stop. Every step heavier than the last, his mind screamed at him to rest. But his heart screamed louder. "She needs me." The hunters closed in, one appeared behind them, blade raised, the faint glow reflecting off the snow. The girl looked over Daniel's shoulder and cried out, "Daniel!" Without looking back, Daniel shifted, his foot catching on a root. He spun and hurled the piece of wood at the hunter's face. The strike was clumsy, but enough to make the hunter stumble. Then Daniel turned and ran again, his breath harsh, his arms numb, but the girl clung to him tightly, whispering, "Don't stop. Please don't stop." Finally, through the trees, a faint light appeared, a cave entrance, glowing faintly from inside, maybe fire, maybe safety. Daniel didn't think, he only moved, heading straight toward it, but the hunters were faster. One appeared at the mouth of the cave, his blade drawn, his voice cold. "End of the path." "Human," Daniel skidded to a stop, chest heaving, snow clinging to his torn clothes. The girl trembling in his arms. "Stay behind me," he whispered, though she was already in his grasp. The hunter stepped forward, his smile cruel. But before he could strike, the cave's light grew brighter. A deep growl echoed from inside. Something ancient, something powerful. The hunter hesitated, his eyes narrowing. Daniel's heart pounded, fear mixing with hope. Whatever lived inside the cave had noticed them, and for the first time the hunters seemed unsure. The girl buried her face against Daniel's chest, whispering, "It's not just a cave. It's sacred. My people used to come here." Daniel tightened his grip. His eyes locked on the hunter, his body shaking but unyielding. "Then maybe this place will protect us." The snowstorm howled outside. The forest waited in silence. And between the hunters, the boy, and the orphan, the air grew heavy with the weight of what would happen next. The chase was not over. This was only the beginning. The cave glowed faintly, warm air rising from cracks in the stone. The snowstorm outside roared like a beast, but inside there was a silence heavy with danger. Daniel stood at the entrance, clutching the orphan girl close, his breath ragged, his body bruised, his coat missing, his arms trembling. The hunter blocking the entrance raised his glowing blade, his eyes sharp, his voice cold. "Give her to us, human, and you might live." Daniel's jaw tightened. His heart pounded, but his voice came steady. "She's not yours, she never was, if you want her. You'll have to kill me first." The orphan girl shook her head, tears streaming. "No, Daniel, please don't fight anymore. They'll hurt you." Her small hands clung to his shirt, her glow trembling like a fading star. But Daniel only held her tighter. "You're not garbage, you're not a burden. You're family," he whispered. His voice fierce despite his weakness, the hunter stepped forward, blade humming. But then the cave rumbled. A deep growl rolled through the stone, the ground shook. The walls lit with strange symbols that began to glow. The orphan gasped, her eyes widening. It's awake! The guardian. From the depths of the cave, a massive shape emerged. Not human, not alien like her kind, but something older. Its body carved with glowing lines, its eyes burning like fire. It looked down at the intruders, its voice like thunder. This place is sacred. None shall spill blood here. The hunters froze. Their confidence shaken, one whispered, "The guardian still lives." Daniel felt fear crawl up his spine, but also hope. He whispered to the girl, "Does it protect you?" She nodded weakly. "My people once prayed here. It answers only the innocent." The guardian's burning eyes fixed on the hunters. "You hunt a child? Then you are unworthy." Before the hunters could move, the ground split beneath them, glowing cracks spreading like lightning. They stumbled, their blades flickering out, shadows wrapping around them, pulling them back into the storm outside, their screams fading into the wind. The cave grew silent again. The guardian turned its gaze to Daniel and the girl. It studied them for a long moment, then spoke softly. "The bond you share is strong, fragile, yet unbreakable. Keep it, for it will carry you both through fire and frost." Then the light dimmed. The guardian faded back into the stone, the glow on the walls slowly vanishing, leaving only the warmth of the cave fire. Daniel collapsed to his knees, his body finally giving in. The girl cried out, "Daniel!" She pulled the coat tighter around him, though it was far too small for his larger frame, her hands shaking. "Don't leave me, please." He forced a smile through his exhaustion. "I won't, not ever." She hugged him tightly, tears soaking his shirt. "Why do you keep risking everything for me? I'm nothing. Just an orphan, abandoned, unwanted." Daniel lifted her chin gently, his voice soft but strong. "You're not nothing, you're alive. You're worth more than they ever believed, and as long as I breathe, you'll never be alone again." The girl stared at him, her heart heavy with emotions she couldn't name. She whispered, "Then I'll stay with you, no matter where we go." He nodded, pulling the coat tighter around her shoulders. "Then it's a promise, as long as you wear this coat, you'll know you're safe." The storm outside raged, but inside the cave, warmth surrounded them, fragile yet real. By dawn, the hunters were gone, their tracks erased by the storm. The market would whisper again, but Daniel no longer cared. The girl no longer feared, because they had survived the night. When the sun finally rose, Daniel carried her out of the cave, the snow glittering under the light, the world still harsh, still cold, but no longer hopeless. The girl looked up at him, her small hand gripping his. "Where will we go?" Daniel gazed at the horizon, his voice steady. "Somewhere better, somewhere they can't touch us, somewhere we can start again." She leaned against him, whispering softly, "As long as you're there, anywhere is home." And so they walked into the snow together, a human boy and an alien orphan, bound not by blood but by choice, by kindness, and by a promise made with a coat in the coldest night, a promise that would echo long after the snow melted, long after the whispers faded. A story of how one boy's kindness turned despair into hope, and how a coat became more than fabric. It became a shield, a bond, a vow. They did not know what dangers still waited beyond the storm, but they knew one thing with certainty. Neither of them would ever be alone again.